Our next speaker is Brother Dago Rodriguez, Worshipful Brother Dago Rodriguez. He's a past master and the current lodge master of the South Pasadena Masonic Lodge 290. Actually, you're past master now, aren't you? Yeah. But he's the current master at the Southern California Lodge of Research as well. He heads the Candidate Education Program and is the co-chairman of the Illumination Lecture Series at his home lodge. Brother Rodriguez is again, a current master of the Lodge of Research there, which produces the award-winning Fraternal Review magazine. Right here, one of the best research magazines in publication today. I know because I subscribe to all of them. For sure. He also serves on 3 committees for the Grand Lodge of California, the California Freemason Magazine, Membership Retention, and Masonic Branding. In 2017, his lodge brothers voted him Mason of the Year. He is a 2-time Hiram Award recipient, which is an award that, is it California or just your lodge does? California lodges do. In 2019, he spearheaded the reinvention of the first West Coast Masonicon weekend at his lodge in South Pasadena, California. And that's why this convention is 3 days, is because Dago's was 3 days. And I said, that is awesome. So that's what we did. So anything that you think is so amazing that we did here, it's because Brian did it, and then he did it, and then Joe did it. So without any further delay, here is Brother Dago Rodriguez.
Thank you, Brother RJ. That was a nice introduction. Just saved me 5 minutes. Good morning, everybody. It's nice to be back in the lodge. It's been a while. I haven't been in the lodge since March. In California, they shut us down March 14th, I remember. So the Masonic energy here, the brotherhood is real, and I feel it. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to be part of this historic weekend. As Brother RJ mentioned, I am the 2-time past master of South Pasadena Masonic Lodge. I am also the current master of the Southern California Research Lodge, which publishes the Fraternal Review magazine. The managing editor of the magazine. We do 11 issues a year. Part of this talk is inspired by the Fight Club and Freemasonry issue that we put out in April of this year. Anybody can subscribe to the Fraternal Review magazine at theresearchlodge.com. You don't have to be a Mason to read it, and you don't have to commit to a year subscription. You could also download digital versions of the magazine, depending on the topic. We research a topic, dissect it, analyze it, and review it, and put all the findings in each issue. So it's about 16, 20 pages long, so not too much of a commitment. I studied film production and received my degree from Cal State Northridge in California, and later my master's degree from the American Film Institute. And during my first year in film school, I was required to take a film theory class with this professor named Margot Kasdan. Oh, I forgot to mention, I had recently co-produced the documentary Illuminated that was directed, produced, and written by Brother Johnny Royal, which you can catch on Amazon if you're interested. So in film school, we did, she had us, it was a film theory class and that Margot Kasdan ran. And she said, you know, this film theory class is going to change your perspective on watching films. After this class, you're not going to enjoy movies the way you enjoy them, because now you're going to see them analytically and dissect them to see, when they're done right, what makes them work. She said, because it was that it would draw out and analyze the signs and symbols that make the well-made movie more dynamic and profound through the use and power of symbolism. She would go on to tell us then that when we have a profound movie viewing experience, it's not just due to the well-written story, which is important, the dynamic visuals, which at times are necessary, or the breathtaking performances, which are crucial, but by the craftsmanship of time, space, and imagery that filmmakers use to guide our experience and take us on an emotional and magical journey. About 15 years later, I became a Master Mason, where the ritual and the symbolism bestowed upon me had a profound impact that would trigger a deep vibrational response that was moving and life-changing. And I saw the connection between the two, filmmaking and Freemasonry. Both strive to compel us through storytelling and symbolism, both communicate a visceral experience to teach us about the birth, conflict, love, growth, death, and ultimately resurrection. It's a modern day catharsis that I started to connect between both Freemasonry and filmmaking. This talk was originally inspired, as Brother RJ mentioned, last year, our lodge had the privilege of hosting the first West Coast Masonic Conference, and part of it was screenings, film screenings, and we decided to screen Fight Club because it was its 20th anniversary, and a lot of brothers were talking about the movie recently and some of the parallels that they saw in Freemasonry with the movie. So I don't know if you can barely see him there, but it was moderated by Brother Adrian Foley, who's sitting here, our own RJ right here, myself, and Brother Michael Jarzabak from Massachusetts. And we discussed the parallels in the panel of the film. We were short on time, so we only had 30 minutes, but it left more to be desired to talk about. Present in the audience were other editors from the Fraternal Review magazine. And later that year, when we sat down to talk about the themes that we wanted to write about in 2020, I brought up, hey, why don't we do an issue on Fight Club? And they were a little perplexed and asked me, well, how are you going to fill an entire Masonic publication with a story about a male chauvinist anarchist and passionless narcoleptic schizophrenic? And I made my case that I'm here to make today. I told them it was all about role models. I want to focus on the importance of role models, and even though these characters are the complete opposite of role models, there is a truth that connects their emotional plight to Freemasonry. Through our critical breakdown of Masonic symbols, the story of Fight Club will prove that to us that underneath it all, the blood, cursing, sex, and male misogyny, there is a valuable lesson in this postmodernistic film. The real story is about fighting to become something greater than ourselves. But sometimes we need to acknowledge where we come from and how to build from those experiences. I'm going to show you a clip. In the following clip, our two protagonists, if you will, after a night of fighting, discuss who they would like to fight in the future. I'll give you a warning. This movie was rated R, so all my clips are rated R as well. There's cursing, violence, blood, fighting. I did cut out the sex because my mother's watching, and we don't really need to discuss that for this sake of argument. So let me see if you could hear.
If you could fight anyone, who would you fight?
Fight my boss, probably.
Really?
Yeah, why? Who would you fight?
Fight my dad.
I don't know my dad. I mean, I know him, but he left when I was like 6 years old, married this other woman, had some other kids. He like did this every 6 years. He goes to a new city and starts a new family.
Fucker setting up franchises. My dad never went to college, so it's real important that I go.
That sounds familiar.
So I graduate, I call him up long distance. I said, Dad, now what? He says, get a job.
Same here.
Now I'm 25. Make my yearly call again. I say, Dad, now what? He says, I don't know. Get married.
I mean, you can't get married. I'm a 30-year-old boy.
We're a generation of men raised by women. I'm wondering if another woman is really the answer we need.
And the elements that were missing in their childhood as they were being raised by their fathers. And in the next clip, they actually they move up a notch and they start talking about fighting some public figures. Let's see.
The club became a reason to cut your hair short or trim your fingernails.
Okay. Any historical figure?
I'd fight Gandhi.
Good answer.
How about you?
Lincoln.
Lincoln.
Big guy, big reach. Skinny guys fight till they're burger.
The absence of role models the two clips illustrate how the absence of role models has a profound effect on how they view the world. Bleak, empty, compromised. Did we notice how the narrator, Norton, speaks to Tyler, Brad Pitt? He always speaks to him in profile and his back is turned at him. This is interesting because the only time they face each other is when they're fighting physically or when there's a deep, profound connection made to who he is internally. Brother Darren Lawners wrote in The Importance of Being a Role Model, my generation has been bombarded with years of targeted advertising that teaches happiness equals stuff. We are conditioned to believe that success is a measurement of what you own, not who you are. We've been taught to consume, consume, consume. He continues, couple this with many of us not having a real male role model growing up, is it any wonder we are all angry and selfish children? The current state of the world is at odds. A pandemic, division, riots, protests, class struggles, lack of education, lack of health. And now more than ever, we have younger men entering our lodges who are tied to their mobile devices and are consumed by social media and advertising like no other generation. Their identities are now formed by social media influencers or deliberately packaged entertainers. Most enter our lodge doors asking, "Who am I? Tell me." The search for identity and a spiritual connection is far greater now than ever before. Let's see if this clip plays better.
For 6 months, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. With insomnia, nothing's real. Everything's far away. Everything's a copy of a copy of a copy. When deep space exploration ramps up, it'll be the corporations that name everything. The IBM Stellar Sphere, the Microsoft Galaxy, Planet Starbucks.
Gonna need you out of town a little more this week. We got some red flags to cover.
It must have been Tuesday. He was wearing his cornflower blue tie.
You want me to deprioritize my current reports until you advise of a status upgrade?
Make these your primary action items. Here's your flight coupons. Call me from the road if there's any snags.
He was full of pep. Must have had his grande latte enema. Like so many others, I had become a slave to the IKEA nesting instinct.
Yes. I'd like to order the Erica Picari dust ruffles.
Please hold.
If I saw something clever, like a little coffee table in the shape of a yin-yang, I had to have it. The Klipsk personal office unit, the Hovatrek home exerbike, or the Yohanneshav sofa with the string green stripe pattern. Even the Rizlampa wire lamps of environmentally friendly unbleached paper. I'd flip through catalogs and wonder, what kind of dining set defines me as a person? I had it all, even the glass dishes with tiny bubbles and imperfections, proof that they were crafted by the honest, simple, hard-working indigenous peoples of
Please hold.
wherever.
I was holding.
Your call is important.
We used to read pornography. Now it was the Horchow collection.
No, you can't die from insomnia.
What about narcotics?
Affairs has never been more important. Where are we as Freemasons? How are we representing ourselves, and why do we matter now more than ever? What are we, as a seasoned Freemasons, doing at our lodges to be the example to the younger brothers? Think back to when you first entered a lodge. You got the courage to cross the West Gate, but what were you really looking for? What did you really want? And then what did you really need? There is an insecurity, masculine anxiety that every man must face, and crossing the threshold of a lodge, I feel, is an excellent first step in facing it. When we enter our respective mother lodges, we wanted to be inspired, moved. We wanted to make a connection with at least one man at this lodge that would motivate us to be better, on purpose or inadvertently. Isn't that what every person is looking for when they enter a new community? It's just part of the human condition. But do we as Masons know how to provide it? What are we doing about it, and how do we exemplify it? In this next scene, the narrator becomes addicted to support groups. He becomes addicted to a support group. He finds meaning within himself from the weakness of others.
Go ahead. Go knees. You can cry.
And then something happened. I let go. Lost in oblivion. Dark and silent and complete. I found freedom. Losing all hope was freedom. Babies don't sleep this well.
became addicted. If I didn't say anything, people always assume the worst. They cried harder, then I cried harder.
Now we're going to open the green door, the heart chakra.
I wasn't really dying.
Inside.
I wasn't host to cancer or parasites.
Step inside.
I was the warm little center that the life of this world crowded around.
Imagine your pain as a white ball of healing light. It moves over your body, healing you. Now keep this going, remember to breathe, and step forward through the back door of the room. Where does it lead? To your cave. Step forward into your cave. That's right. You're going deeper into your cave. You're going to find your power animal.
Every evening I died, and every evening I was born again, resurrected.
It is any wonder that men no longer have a firm grasp on what it means to be a man. Moreover, in the absence of a male role modeling in the family structure, is it any wonder that children are also unclear about the purpose and meaning of manhood in America? The illustrious Robert G. Davis writes, defining and understanding manhood is arguably the most significant sociological dilemma in our society. But it wasn't always that way, and it doesn't have to continue to be that way. It is easier to be a man than we may think. As men, we don't have to formulate our masculine identity out of thin air. Neither do we have to accept someone's definition of the appropriateness of manhood. Nor do we need to adhere to outdated and archaic models of masculinity. We are not obliged or obligated to be the men our fathers or grandfathers were. We need to reclaim our appropriate roles as men, take on responsibilities of manhood with our own eyes, and pass what it means to be a man to each succeeding generation of men. Every man needs a picture or a metaphor of what he is doing and what it means to be a man. Our role as American men is to maintain the stability of our country. It is up to us to stay the course of what constitutes ideals in masculinity. Over the past several decades, American men have bought into a notion that an image of manhood can be depicted on the screen easier and safer than real life. Perhaps men intuitively know the failings of their own gender well enough to also fear modeling themselves after other men. But it is far more likely that men simply no longer have a clear enough definition of themselves to confidently play an active participant role with their own gender. When we don't know who we are, it is much easier to model oneself after an image of a man that has been packaged by a camera. This is precisely the mindset that makes John Wayne or a James Bond an iconic hero. And I would say even a Tyler Durden. So that was my simple explanation of how I convinced the Fraternal Review to go ahead and allow to print this issue, this 20-page issue. But this is how the topic was born. Has anybody seen them? Who has not seen the movie? Well, good. I'm going to ruin the whole movie for you. So a bit of backstory. Fight Club is based off a book by author Chuck Palahniuk. It was published in 1996 by Norton Company, but it wasn't his first book. His first book was one called Invisible Monsters, about this model that wants to commit suicide but botches the suicide and shoots her jaw off, gets reconstructive surgery, and has to go through therapy for a year where she meets this man who's going to have a sex change operation but has to live as a woman for a year. So they decide to go on this road trip, and through the road trip they find out that I wouldn't ruin the end because I know you're going to go and read it now. That they have some close, deep secret that they both share, And that book was considered too fringy, too out there. He was a first-time writer. Nobody wanted to touch it, so they didn't publish it. So he upset over this. He retreated back to Seattle, Washington, and started writing his anti-establishment book, which became Fight Club. Fight Club was later purchased by 20th Century Fox through the Gullies for $10,000. Gullies are the manuscripts right before a book is going to get published, and studios have literary scouts that actually go to these publishing companies and read these books to see if they could get made into movies, and they purchase them early enough so if they gain popularity, the price for the book doesn't go up too high. So this is how Fight Club ended up at 20th Century Fox. Then they hired screenwriter Jim Uhls to adapt the script, and then brought on director David Fincher, who at that time was a well-established and award-winning music video and TV commercial director. This was his fourth feature, his first being Aliens 3. This is the one where Sigourney Weaver was bald and there were no guns in the spaceship. Then 7 was his critically acclaimed hit that got him a little more notoriety and respect as a filmmaker. And then the Michael Douglas, Sean Penn feature, The Game. And then the cast was rounded up by Brad Pitt, Edward Norton, Helen Bonham Carter, the singer Meatloaf, and Jared Leto before he became a rock star and later an Academy Award winner. The film went into production in 2018 with a $63 million budget. It finished shooting that December, and it was released in October 15th, 1999. It came out on fire already in a bad way. It had a lot of negativity with the violence, the misogyny, chauvinism. It was called irresponsible. What they say? The New Yorker called it a foolish waste of time. The New York Times called it an insult. The LA Times also called it a witless mishmash of whiny, infantile philosophizing and bone-crushing violence that actually thinks it's saying something of significance. On the opposite end, Variety said, rarely has a film been so keyed on its time. How good is Fight Club? So fired up and explosive with ideas and killing humor that the guardians of morality are yelling, danger, keep out. That's how good. Rolling Stone. This is the first truly meaningful movie about the Generation X experience, and it arrives at a time when it's almost certain to be misunderstood. So yeah, the film came out and domestically made $37 million. Its budget was $63 million, so it was considered a flop. But internationally, it made over $65 million, which kind of brought it even to the studio standards. But it found a second life on DVD when it was released on digital video. That's when DVD was in its height and everybody had a DVD player and they were buying DVDs. And when it came out, the first wave of its release made $55 million just on the home box office sales of those discs. And then the studio understood that they had a cult classic in their hands. That's when a movie comes out initially and nobody sees it, doesn't make any money. But then over time, people are talking about it more than they did when it first came out. So much so that Entertainment Weekly put out an issue called the Top 50 Cult Movies and mentioned Fight Club in this issue in 2003 and called it a misunderstood masterpiece. So how do we further connect Fight Club to Freemasonry and the need for role models? I will use the symbolism, morals, and rules of the Fight Club world to prove the subversive point the film makes. Without role models, there is no moral compass to gauge our actions. And even though we might convince ourselves that we are doing things for the greater good, we might actually be doing it for the greater evil. I will illustrate this by touching on the need for purpose, duality of man, ashlars, the power of initiation, divestment of the material world, and secrecy. Need for purpose. I played the clip earlier with a narrator becoming part of that support community. And now in this clip, his alter ego downloads more meaning or understanding for their purpose, their purpose for existing.
Look around. I see a lot of new faces. Shut up! Which means a lot of you have been breaking the first 2 rules of Fight Club. Man, I see see in Fight Club the strongest and smartest men who've ever lived. I see all this potential, and I see it squandered. God damn it, an entire generation pumping gas, waiting tables, slaves with white collars. Advertising has us chasing cars and clothes, working jobs we hate so we can buy shit we don't need. We're the middle children of history, man. No purpose or place. We have no Great War, no Great Depression. Our Great War is a spiritual war. Our Great Depression is our lives. We've all been raised on television to believe that one day we'd all be millionaires and movie gods and rock stars, but we won't. We're slowly learning that fact. And we're very, very pissed off.
Entire reason why we should all be Masons. He is really giving meaning to their cause, to their movement. These are not just fights that they get into with each other, but they are atonements of survival and rebirth, or understanding their existence, the disenchantment of needing a purpose. I mean, how did the American Civil War Revolution really get started? Historians point to the Boston Tea Party, where a bunch of locals dumped the English tea overboard as a sign of protest that they wouldn't live under British rule. How many of those were Masons, right? We have Brother Hancock, we have Brother Warren, and Brother Revere. These are just some of the Masons that partook in this movement, if you will. But they just didn't help out and go do it. They actually helped plan it. So once again, it is interesting to note that almost all democratic revolutions of the 18th and 19th centuries were led by Freemasons of several continents. While conspiracy theorists view this fact as proof of a worldwide plot of the craft, the truth is far simpler. Those who inculcate the tenets of Freemasonry will be inspired to correct the ills of the world. The democratic revolutions of the 18th century are a direct outgrowth of this. This is from Samuel Friedman, Millennial Apprentices. Later in the film, the group grows larger. They each call themselves Space Monkeys. They also titled their new mission Project Mayhem. Now, instead of fighting over each other, they are fighting the system, destroying Blockbuster video stores, vandalizing BMW dealerships, blowing up Apple computer stores, all leading to the ultimate goal of destroying all the credit card company buildings in the city. By the complete opposite, Masons are builders. Civic-minded examples that believe in the greater good of the whole and erect structures that are used to improve and foster harmony in our surrounding communities. Public schools, hospitals, national monuments, libraries, museums, building of service and knowledge, because when we help one, we help all. A candidate enters the lodge unaware of the many facets he holds within himself to improve the world around him. It's up to the role model, the seasoned Mason, to make him aware of the inner strength he, the new Mason, carries, and to become an important contributor to the community and the world around him. One way is by educating the candidate of the tools and symbols we use in our craft. Another part of making him understand how to balance, another part of it is making him understand how to balance the dark and the light, the good and the evil, and the duality within himself. In this next clip, the narrator has finally become aware of his alter ego, Tyler, that it's really him, and has discovered the master plan of blowing up the credit card companies in the city. Coming to his senses, the narrator wants to naturally stop it, but Tyler takes him captive and makes the narrator aware that this was what he always wanted. This was always part of this subconscious plan.
You're a voice in my head.
Your voice in mine.
You're a fucking hallucination. Why can't I get rid of you?
You need me.
No, I don't. I really don't anymore.
You created me. I didn't create some loser alter ego to make myself feel better. Take some responsibility.
I do. I am responsible for all of it, and I accept that. So please, I'm begging you, please call this off.
Have I ever let us down? How far have you come because of me?
I will bring us through this. As always, I will carry you, kicking and screaming, and in the end, you will thank me.
I'm grateful to you for everything that you've done for me. But this is too much. I don't want this.
What do you want? You want to go back to the shit job? Fucking condo world watching sitcoms? Fuck you. I won't do it.
Oh my God. This can't be happening.
It's already done, so shut up. 60 seconds. You'll see all right.
I can figure this out. I can figure this out. This isn't even real. You're not real. That gun isn't even in your hand. That gun's in my hand.
Hey, good for you. Doesn't change a thing. Why you want to put a gun to your head?
Not my head, Tyler. Our head.
Interesting. Where you going with this, IKEA boy? Hey, it's you and me. Friends.
Tyler. I want you to really listen to me.
Okay.
My eyes are open.
What's that smell?
It is by conquering the inner demon that the narrator takes control of his life to create inner balance and peace. Finally, he can be in harmony with himself and those around him. We use the word light to refer to knowledge, information, divinity, and inspiration. But what of the darkness? According to Francis Bacon, in order for the light to shine so brightly, the darkness must be present. And Shakespeare wrote, "The web of our life is a mingled yarn, good and ill together." Our travels through human existence are checkered with moments of both light and darkness, good and evil. Our collective moments of triumph are bracketed by our failures. This causes many to ask the question, if light is the wellspring of goodness and the energy that brings life to the earth, why would darkness be so prevalent in the great design of our existence? It is difficult to reconcile this darkness as evil acts pervade the world around us throughout history. It is exactly this contrast that defines human existence. The duality of light and dark is the core of consciousness and free will. Free will is the capacity to decide our own fate and to choose how we interact with the world around us. Rather than acting on instinct alone, free will is facilitated by the concept of choice. By having knowledge of both good and evil, we are able to create our view of the world and act accordingly. This duality governs every aspect of our existence and is unique to each individual. What is good for one may be evil to another. What is right and just in one moment may be wrong and unfair in the next. To quote Albert Pike, to show the light to birds of the night is to conceal it from them, since it blindeth them and is darker to them than the darkness. From the start, the symbolism of the mosaic pavement is laid before the candidate to make him aware of the dual facets of man. There is a dark side and a light side to each and every one of us. And until we learn how to control those dual natures, we will never achieve peace and harmony within our inner selves. This will be the basis of the individual's character and the actions that he will decide to take. And what do our consistent actions do? Well, they build character. By this action, But this action can only take place by the constant work of chipping away at the rough and superfluous parts of our daily being to eventually become a better and more perfect stone, like the symbolism of the Masonic ashlars. In this next clip, the narrator is intrigued by the power a Fight Club with the example of Ricky, a rough stone that violently becomes a smoother one.
And the eighth and final rule. If this is your first night at Fight Club, you have to fight.
This kid from work, Ricky, couldn't remember whether you ordered pens with blue ink or black. But Ricky was a god for 10 minutes when he trounced the maitre d' of a local food court. Sometimes all you could hear were the flat, hard packing sounds over the yelling. Or the wet choke when someone caught their breath and sprayed. You weren't alive anywhere like you were there. But Fight Club only exists in the hours between when Fight Club starts and when Fight Club ends. Even if I could tell someone they had a good fight, I wouldn't be talking to the same man. Who you were in Fight Club is not who you were in the rest of the world. A guy came to Fight Club for the first time, his ass was a wad of cookie dough. After a few weeks, he was carved out of wood.
The famous sculptor and ardent Freemason Gutzon Borglum was asked how he carved stone into beautiful statues, and he replied, "It is very simple. I merely knock away with hammer and chisel the stone I do not need, and the statue is there. It was there all the time." Early in the lessons of our craft, we're taught the meaning of the ashlar, a stone as taken from the quarry in its rude and natural state and handed over to the artisans whose tools made it fit for placement in the temple. The transformation from its rough to perfect state is adequate to represent the transformation we are seeking in our lives while attaining a higher state of consciousness and rising to a more stately existence. Since the working tools of the old craftsmen were indispensable to their success, we have appropriately retained what they used as symbolically necessary to our own spiritual edification. In particular, the gavel used by our ancestors to break the rough and superfluous parts of stones is enjoined upon as an appropriate to fitting our minds as living stones for that spiritual building, that house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Yet, what constitutes a living stone? Merely its outward appearance, or even more importantly, what gives it a spiritual dynamic? Now, whether in rejoicing or in fear or in prophecy, these living stones are symbolic and outward expressions of what lies hidden beneath the coarse barrier shielding the human interior realm. Stones generally regarded as rigid, cold, and inanimate are actually sacred and Masonic portals to the deepest realms of the human psyche, the depths of the soul. Therein may be discovered one profound knowledge and greater power. Whether within him that is holy and divine cannot be adequately expressed in outward terms. Pure and holy intents are only capable of being known and expressed inwardly. Hence, know thyself is the ancient charge and launching point of mystery schools from which Masonry has certainly descended. And the beginning stages of this is their initiation into a lodge, the start of that internal transformation. In this next clip, the applicants are partially initiated, waiting for 3 days out in the cold to see if they are worthy to be allowed to enter.
Too young. Sorry.
What's all that? What?
Right. If the applicant is young, tell him he's too young. Old, too old, fat, too fat.
Applicant?
If the applicant then waits for 3 days without food, shelter, or encouragement, he may then enter and begin his training.
Training for what? Think this is a game? You're too young to train here. End of story. Now quit wasting our time. Get the fuck out of here.
Bad news, friend. It's not gonna happen. I'm sorry if there's a misunderstanding. It's not the end of the world. Just go away. Go. Because you were trespassing, and I will have to call the police.
Don't you look at me! think you're ever getting in this house? You're never getting in this fucking house. Never. Get the fuck off my porch. Get off my porch!
Sooner or later, we all became what Tyler wanted us to be.
I'm gonna go inside and I'm gonna get a shovel.
Got 2 black shirts,
Sir.
2 pair of black pants,
Yes, sir.
1 pair of black boots,
Sir.
2 pair of black socks,
Sir.
1 black jacket,
Sir.
$300 personal burial money.
Yes, sir.
All right. You're too old, fat man. Your tits are too big. Get the fuck off my porch.
Bob. Bob.
Like a monkey ready to be shot into space. Space monkey. Ready to sacrifice himself for the greater good.
You are too fucking old, fatty! And you're too fucking blonde! Get out of here, the both of you!
And so it went.
First thing that comes to mind in the allegorical sense is the crossing of the threshold. You have the candidate seeking admission into a dilapidated house, a downright dangerous home in search of something greater than himself. And Tyler, being the Lodge Tyler, is protecting, or shall I say, guarding the West Gate. Time with patience and perseverance will accomplish all things. So the entered apprentice then becomes the fellow craft, educating the new prospects on how initiation works. Waiting for 3 days, emblematic of the 3 degrees of masonry, and on how they can earn it. And the master is watching through the window from his metaphoric enlightened throne up above on the 2nd floor. Whatever the circumstances, such exalted experiences result in awakening of consciousness. This is the goal of the initiatic experience within Freemasonry, this awakening of an individual to his connection to the spiritual plane. The individual is no longer blissfully ignorant of the non-material existence and begins to thirst for direct communion with the spiritual reality which he senses. Robert Hurd in the Initiatic Experience wrote, in essence, part of him has stopped existing and a new part has started a journey, fulfilling the basic definition of initiation given previously. To quench his desires, to explore his higher consciousness, he may now delve into music, poetry, philosophy, and other intangible arts that inspire this feeling beyond the limitations of the body and mind. Each person who comes and knocks at our doors, who seeks this wisdom that has been passed down to us from age to age, culture to culture, and recorded history and time immemorial, needs to know that whatever academic knowledge he possesses, whatever philosophical ideas he holds, whatever religious faith he claims, there remains something more, something infinitely more for him yet to learn, and to which the craft can help to lead him to. This, my brothers, is one of the greatest facets of what Freemasonry has to offer, that it has something to offer to anyone and everyone. They must know that this must not be sought for profit, for material gain, or because of idle curiosity, not even for the reasons so many give, such as because my father, grandfather, uncle, etc. was one. It has to be personal, internal quest for transformation to make themselves better. Though their first initiation, through their first initiation, the divestment of mineral objects is learned. It is the eternal qualities and not the external qualities that define a man. In this next clip, we saw the clip earlier of the narrator at his apartment deciding what kind of IKEA furniture to buy and what kind of china clearly defines him. But later that apartment explodes and he's homeless. And that night, all alone, he meets Tyler at a bar to discuss what happened.
There's always that. I don't know, it's just when you buy furniture, you tell yourself that's
That's it. That's the last sofa I'm gonna need. Whatever else happens, I've got that sofa problem handled. I had it all. I had a stereo that was very decent, a wardrobe that was getting very respectable. I was close to being complete.
Shit, man, now it's all gone.
All gone. All gone.
Do you know what a duvet is?
Comforter.
It's a blanket. Just a blanket. Now, why do guys like you and I know what a duvet is? Is this essential to our survival in the hunter-gatherer sense of the word? No. What are we then?
Consumers.
Right. We are consumers. We are byproducts of a lifestyle obsession. Murder, crime, poverty, these things don't concern me. What concerns me are celebrity magazines, television with 500 channels, some guy's name on my underwear, Rogaine, Viagra, Olestra.
Martha Stewart.
Fuck Martha Stewart. Martha's polishing the brass on the Titanic. It's all going down, man. So fuck off with your sofa units and string green stripe patterns. I say never be complete. I say stop being perfect. I say let's evolve. Let the chips fall where they may. That's me, and I could be wrong. Maybe it's a terrible tragedy.
No, it's just stuff. It's not tragedy.
Well, you did lose a lot of versatile solutions for modern living.
Fuck, you're right. No, it's my insurance is probably gonna cover it. So. What?
Things you own end up owning you. But do what you like, man.
End up owning you. When asked to contribute to a worthy cause, the apprentice finds he is penniless, unable to do so, naked and an object of charity himself. This is a reminder to aid those whom he finds in life and are in need of help. The scene should make him feel that he is nothing more or nothing less than what he is as a man, that he should be judged by what he is and not be valued in terms of dress, possessions, or title or money. H.W. Percival says, all the symbols and ceremonies are intended to impress upon him what to do with his desires and the use of his desire mind, feeling mind, and body mind in this conduct towards himself, his brothers, and his God. The triune self being mind, body, soul, or spirit, which is emblematic of the Masonic apron. We all must learn to be of service. When we all work with the intent that what we do is for the greater service of all, we come to terms with the idea that one is all. Being selfless and humble is at times an attack to the ego, but that balance must be met with the understanding we are all one divine human race. We are all interconnected. But can you be trusted? Can you provide a service, and can I trust you to do it can I trust you to do what you promise? When all you have is your word, how can you value it? And this is how we connect it to secrecy. And this is another clip that will...
Every week, Tyler gave the rules that he and I decided.
Gentlemen, welcome to Fight Club. The first rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club. The second rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club. Third rule of Fight Club, someone yells stop, goes limp, taps out. The fight is over. Fourth rule, only two guys to a fight. Fifth rule, one fight at a time, fellas. Sixth rule, no shirts, no shoes. Seventh rule, fights will go on as long as they have to. And the eighth and final rule, if this is your first night at Fight Club, you have to fight.
So secrecy and silence followed by a harsh penalty for violating the oath is learned by every entered apprentice. Think about that penalty. Joseph Fort Newton said, if Masonry uses the illusion of secrecy, it is because it knows that it is the nature of man to seek what is hidden and to desire what is forbidden. Even God hides from us, that in seeking him amid the shadows of life, we may find both him and ourselves. The man who does not care enough for God to seek him will never find him, though he is not far away from any one of us. The notion of secrecy relates more to a separation from the outside world, a safe haven where men share certain information which is a safe haven where men share certain information which is known only by the group and which aids in creating and identifying for the organization. Secrecy is important to the group because it sets the organization apart from the rest of society. In Freemasonry, secrecy and ritual are the essence of the organization. Its rituals and secrets become the vehicles for teaching its members moral and ethical principles, virtues, and values which distinguish it from other educational and philosophical organizations. In the physical world, secrecy is associated with security and with concealment. And those with this orientation find it easy to believe that any secret must conceal some sinister activity or at least some activity which one is ashamed. And in the ordinary sense of the world, there is virtually nothing in Freemasonry to be kept secret. In any case, the overwhelming preponderance of a symbolic structure ritual is written and defined by the United Grand Lodge of England as being intensely personal, but not secret. Only the means by which Masons recognize one another are said to be secret. And even those few secrets have been compromised frequently. Indeed, there are some 6 million Masons in the world, and it is difficult to argue anything known to 6 million people is a secret in any ordinary sense of the world. In the psychological world, secrecy is not a simple device for security. Secrecy is a container. Who is involved in the creative process or who knows someone who is will recognize this function of secrecy immediately. Creative artists regularly apply this principle by containing their work, holding it close until it is ready to be manifested. Such people have learned by experiencing a failure to contain their work. Not doing so drains off their energy and destroys their creativity. For secrecy imposed on an entered apprentice. As he works with the principles of the craft, he will learn about the nature of himself and the relationship to the universe and to divinity. There are intensely personal experiences, and secrecy is a container within which the individual preserves them. It is this critical, important interior process which the craft nurtures by the use of its external symbol of secrecy. Secrecy is keeping your tongue in your mouth when you do not need to speak, and that's where in the oath of the first degree you find out that it's really more about being an observer and understanding the concept of secrecy and not really hiding anything. So there it is. The need of purpose, duality of man, Astor's power of intention, divestment of the material world, and secrecy. This is how we began our Masonic journey from a rough, curious neophyte into an upright Mason. And through this journey, if applied correctly, we start to become the role models who inspire the men that enter our lodges to follow suit and become better versions of ourselves. The Masonic ideals in Fight Club run parallel to one another in many of their rich symbols and meanings. And although we might not look at the flawed characters in Fight Club as our role models, they serve an important purpose, if not a downright warning of what can be produced when humanity doesn't have positive role models or leaders to be inspired by, to strive to become and to look up to. Are we as Masons going to answer that need? Because in the end, my brothers, we are not, even though we miss them, we are not our green beans. And even though we love to collect them, we are not our pins. And even though we work hard for them, we are not our titles. We are to lead by example. So let's fight for that. And that's all. Thank you.
Brother Dago, thank you for that presentation. I do have 2 questions. So I'll ask them if you could just kind of paraphrase it a little bit into that question comes from Brother Andrew Lewis. What themes would you extrapolate from Fight Club to assist brothers suffering from mental illness?
Themes, I would probably suggest to get professional help, right? It's like, I mean, I wouldn't go, Fight Club is not therapy for if you're mentally ill. Is that what he meant? Like, what themes would you extrapolate from Fight Club to help mentally ill individuals? Yeah, seek professional help. Don't go to the movies. Stay away from social media.
Brother Kevin Standen from Washington says, have you found other films like Fight Club that are not Masonic in nature, but can be similarly dissected?
Yes, actually, Fraternal Review was in talks of doing one, The Matrix, the connections, parallels of Freemasonry and the Matrix. That's not really a Masonic movie, but it's got some esoteric qualities that connect to it. You know, I was going to say The Man Who Would Be King, but that definitely has Masonry all over it. We are actually talking about doing a top 10 relatable list of films for the Fraternal Review, but The Matrix is the only one that really comes to mind right now. Really? Wow. That's The Lion King? I mean, there's several. My brain is.
So we have time for just a couple of questions before we break for lunch. Are there any answers? Yes. So do you think these themes are intentional movies versus Freemason religious exploration of themes that are assumably propounded upon?
If the theme, you're asking if the themes in this kind of movie is purposely connected to Freemasonry, and no, I don't think it is. I think that these are universal themes. That's what made this interesting, because originally we were going to do the issue and connect it to the Astros, like I kind of did, and those certain elements. But the real connection was that need for role models. These men did not have the role models in their lives to become better contributors to society. And that's what I know in our lodge, we've seen a lot of younger Masons come in to become Masons, and they are searching for that. They're looking for role models, people that they can aspire to become or be motivated by, or just see individuals that are passionate about something that fires them up to be passionate about something in their own lives. And once we made that connection, it really felt like, you know, the themes of Masonry are far reaching. And if you really start to analyze it and look deeper into it, you see how it connects to a lot of things on almost everything in our lives. So that's why this issue and this topic really came into fruition when we made the connections that, you know, we come to Masonry to become better men. And how do you become better men unless you have better men than you in a lodge to begin with, right? So you follow those role models to become a better version of yourself. And that's a universal theme, right? If you go work at a company, you want to be like the boss at that company. If he's a good boss, you're going to follow their lead and then go off and become your own boss and emulate what he started. So it's not far. It's not that. It's far-reaching, really, and that's how that connections were simply made. But you have to break it down. You have to read the subtext and see what was the internal motivation underneath the film, and not just take it on the surface like a lot of the critics did when I first started talking, that they just saw it for it's a male chauvinist, violent piece of work that is just trying to get attention and like a whining baby, and not really getting into the core. But they weren't really paying attention to the core and the foundation of where this story stems from and why these men ended up that way. They wanted to be spoon-fed the idea and have somebody come up at the start of the movie and explain it to them, so they were like, oh, okay, now I'll watch it from a different point of view. Now I'll watch it from a different lens, because now I can connect to it differently. But here, what the filmmakers and author decided to do was, I'm going to be subversive and hide it underneath and see if you can figure it out. See if you really are paying attention to what's going on. Just like when you're on the sides watching ritual. Are you paying attention to what's going on, or are we just there to fill the seats? Right. And I think it really drives that message home. And that's why I really enjoyed the idea of this and getting made and sharing it with everybody, so you can agree with it or not agree with it. It's okay. There's no issue if you don't see it, but we do. Any other questions? I have issues of Fight Club. If anybody wants to grab one, $5 a piece, but I'll give one away. Ready? Question? Who can tell me what the 8th rule of Fight Club is? You can hand first. What's the 8th rule of Fight Club?
It's your first night at Fight Club. Yeah.
Yes, there you go. Very much.
Thank you for your world premiere, my friend.
Thank you. Yes, the first time. We were going to do it in my lodge in April, but we shut down, so we nixed it. So this is the first time.
You guys were the first to hear it. So I want to thank Brother Dago for this. At 12, so it's time for lunch. We have about 52, 53 restaurants in the area you are free to go to. You got to wear your mask when you go in. They'll seat you. Then you can take your mask off and eat. However, Brother Steve Harrison has provided generously a lunch for us. It's a sandwich, cookie, chips, drink, and that is totally free thanks to illustrious Brother Harrison. So we have probably some tables outside we'll have set up, or you can eat standing up or at these tables down there if you can get a spot. But I want to thank you guys, and we'll be back here at 2:00 sharp for our State Education Officer, Grand Lodge, Illinois, Brother Scott Duball. So don't miss that one, because it's going to enrage you. Maybe. Yeah, we'll see. See you at 2.